because I had heard it called meditation on steroids. And I was like, I want meditation on steroids. That sounds fantastic.
That's great.
That sounds really cool.
Have our mind and brain continue to just keep going and going and going.
We get so stuck in this monkey mind mentality.
Yeah.
And so I've been trying to cultivate a practice of just recognizing when that monkey mind is doing his thing.
Yeah.
And then to say, there's an inner voice inside of each of us, I think, that is like our true selves.
Yeah.
And that inner voice can get lost so quickly. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Finding Simple Abundance with Adam and Maggie. I am Adam.
And I'm Maggie.
And today we are talking about our second pillar of our simple framework, inner awareness.
I love it.
Yes.
I'm so excited.
And before we jump into that, I guess I should introduce the third member of our cast today. On the podcast studio is our little baby Eva. I am holding her in my arms. She is in the midst of what's called a leap.
Yeah.
Which is like a developmental thing where essentially brains get scrambled, is my understanding.
Her brain is on fire right now.
So she does not want to be put down.
Yeah.
And we need to record. So
here we are.
We're making it work.
Here we are with the little Eva.
Eva.
One little tip. The Leap app is called the Wonder Weeks.
Yes. Shout out to the Wonder Weeks.
It's amazing. It's
Eva
so
was
fascinating.
acting really weird and we're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Pulled up in the app. Of course, she's in the middle. You got 5 more days of fussiness.
5 more days of her fussy phase. Cool.
At least we know it's going to end.
I know.
Yes. So like I said, today we are talking about inner awareness, which is the second pillar of our simple framework, which is kind of our idea, our framework for how we want to show up to the world, how we want to live an intentional, meaningful life. And the mindsets, the beliefs, the practices that we want to cultivate within ourselves. We are on this year of exploration and discovery. And this framework is one experiment in that we are, how can we create a way of showing up on a regular basis to our lives?
Yeah.
So Maggie, would you do me a favor and remind me as well as our audience, what is the simple framework?
Yeah.
What are each of the pillars?
Yeah, exactly. Like you said,
there.
they're just things we really want to focus on and prioritize during this year and beyond. And that we've come up with that we're like, these are good. These mean something to us. And so it spells out the acronym SIMPLE. So it starts with S, seek vitality, which we talked about last week. I, inner awareness. M, meaningful relationships. P, pursue creativity. L, live dynamically. And then E, embrace thriving.
Yes. And so each of those pillars kind of builds on the last. This last week, we talked about seeking vitality, the foundational principle of, our health, emotional, physical, spiritual, health, that sense of vitality, that energy. And with that energy, you can show up to life. And so how do you want to show up to life? That's the question. There's an inner voice inside of each of us, I think, that is like our true selves.
Yeah.
And that inner voice can get lost so quickly in all of the humdrum buzz,
the noise of life. Gosh. Yeah.
And so being able to quiet that down, tune in, discover that sense of inner awareness, so that way we can move through the world
and truly,
as our true selves.
Yeah, and truly show up as ourselves with authenticity, just like with that uniqueness and feeling like clear in our minds and feeling just feeling a sense of purpose. Yeah. And I think that is a huge pillar for us, is inner awareness and being able to tap into that and find moments in our day, in our week, that we've either carved out for ourselves to experience those moments of inner awareness and quiet the noise of, everything around us. Or either times that we're just noticing that we can have this mindset shift of inner awareness and prioritizing that, so that even in moments when we're just going about our day, where we're driving, where we're at the grocery store waiting in line or something like that, where we can notice these little moments as places where, hey, I could actually tune in and check in with myself.
That was one thing I wanted to ask you about. In our newsletter, that we are publishing about this topic as well, you had this really interesting phrase of like planned or unplanned opportunities to practice presence. And it's a practice that you've cultivated.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious if you can kind of maybe, and you touched on it a little bit there, but go into a little bit more depth. What do you mean by planned versus unplanned opportunities to practice that inner awareness?
Yeah. So planned would be journaling, would be waking up early. It would be, going on a run or going on a walk or a meditation, like a 10-minute meditation or something that you've set aside. It's like an intentional time that you're like, okay, I'm going to tune inward. Yeah. I'm going to quiet down. And then there's unplanned moments, like I said before, where you're waiting in line or you're just like, you go outside and you see the sunset, or you just look out your window and you're like, whoa, and those are moments, or you're doing the dishes. Like, honestly, a lot of times when I'm doing the dishes, I just like take a breath and check in instead of just like, oh, what do I have to keep doing? Blah, blah, blah. Honestly, there's plenty of that, but just to notice that there's these unplanned moments in our day, and it's a practice of noticing those, because we can just keep going and blowing through the day and keep filling those and have our mind and brain continue to just keep going and going and going. But if we start to shift the way that we're moving through our day, it really can become a practice where we can embody this sense of, I can always tune in. I can always check in. I can always, it doesn't always just have to be like, I have to be on my yoga mat in order to be connected to my inner voice, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, I love it.
I'll just keep going and going.
No.
Well, you got to stop.
I would say if anyone had like this, if I were to have a conversation about inner awareness with anyone, it would be you, because this is your ballywick, if you will. This is your area that you love. I feel like I'm always learning from you.
I just think it's so valuable.
One of the concepts that helped me kind of understand the difference between kind of like your inner true self and this, just constant stream of thoughts that comes through, was this concept called the monkey mind.
Yeah.
And for me, I've always kind of just thought of myself as this internal monologue. Like there was no separation between myself, who I was, and this internal like ruminative, just stream of
thought.
Thought's a good word. I was going to use a bad word. Yes.
That's hilarious.
So, but I was listening to the Almanac of Naval Ravikant, who is just an incredible thinker, investor.
Good.
And if you haven't, the video, or there's a video on YouTube. It's the whole audiobook. He's released it for free. It's an incredible, just like collection of all of his wisdoms and insights. And one of the things he talked about in there was this idea of the monkey mind, and recognizing that you are not this constant stream of thoughts.
Yeah.
Our mind is just always looking to like build or like just think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Think for us and figure things out and fix things,
and
which is great.
And like think in the future and like plan in the past and like go over stuff. And instead of being present and recognizing that there is this deeper self, this truer self beyond that, we get so stuck in this monkey mind mentality.
Yeah.
And so I've been trying to cultivate a practice of just recognizing when that monkey mind is doing his thing.
Yeah.
And then to say, I'm not going to judge it. I'm just going to recognize that this is not me. And as I start to get in the habit of recognizing the monkey mind doing its monkey mind things, the less I like the monkey mind. The more distaste.
You're kind of annoying.
The more distaste I have for this, mindset. And it's allowed me then to start to create a sense of separation from this endless chatter.
Yeah.
And I think you have to get to the place where you recognize the mindless chatter to then be able to find the disgust or distaste for it, to then allow you to start to separate from that, and then to cultivate a practice of just calm and inner peace. Yeah. So the other day I was making some coffee, and I started planning out an email that I was going to be sending to a client that we're going to be working with.
Yeah.
And so I was like, crafting the email, and I was like, what if she responds this way, or how will she read it? And like, if she responds this way, I'll respond that way. And then all of a sudden I was like, what? None of this has happened. This
is all in my mind.
This is all in my mind. I don't need to be thinking about this.
Yeah.
And so instead I just like took a step back and was like, okay, I'm just going to make a cup of coffee.
I'm just going to make my coffee.
And so I just made coffee.
Yeah.
And it ended up just being a much more peaceful experience. And then when I got to the computer and started drafting the email, I just had more energy, more mental focus, because I hadn't spent this last half hour ruminating on 12 different scenarios in which this could take place.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely. I know. I think that when we have those practices where we can quiet the mental chatter, or just like not listen to it or believe it, even, I think there's that idea of like, don't believe every thought that you think. You don't have to believe everything you think. But the more we can quiet that, then you really can be where your feet are. You can be in the thing that you're just doing, and the email flows to you much better, when you're in the moment doing it, rather than thinking about it like a day before you even send it, Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting.
I think there's also something about not even being able to enjoy the moment, because if you get into the habit of constantly projecting or ruminating on the past rather than being present, you lose the ability to truly enjoy the present. One of the things that I've been thinking about is in terms of, and I'm still trying to piece all of this together, so please bear with me, but this concept of money, like in and out, like you have to have a certain amount of money to like live. But once you've met a certain bare minimum threshold, and even then, it's like at any given moment, I don't need money to exist in this spot right now, here at this exact moment.
Yeah.
Right?
I know.
And so instead of saying like, hey, things are good, or like stressing about the future money issues or needing to earn or, whatever.
Right.
It's like, instead I can say like, wait a second, this moment right here, right now, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I don't need food. I don't need water. Like I'm actually just okay.
Yeah.
And I guess money is just like a way of thinking through terms of like resources. Like we have to have resources to survive.
Right.
But at any given moment, I can say, okay, right now, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And even if I was up to my eyeballs in debt, I could still say,
you could still say that.
Wait, at this exact moment, though,
right.
I'm okay.
Yeah, I know.
I just thought that was fascinating.
I know. It's so
like
funny.
This sense of like presence.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's why there's this phrase. Okay, so I kind of say it in the newsletter too, but when there's moments where I'm just like, okay, I can just like take this second and be with myself, if I'm washing the dishes or something, it's just, I feel like just being able to say, okay, anything I'm thinking right now, I can let that go. And for some reason, there's, and I probably heard it in a yoga class, but they were just like, you can let whatever you're thinking go, and it will still be there later if you need it. Like if that thought is actually really important, it will come back to you. Like don't stress about it. Let it go for now. And I don't know why, but it gives me just more trust in like, I don't know, just life, the universe, like whatever, my own mind. It's like, I will remember to get that thing from the store. It will come to me. You know what I mean? Yeah. But then kind of along the lines of what you were talking about, it's just being able to breathe into the present moment. And there's a phrase that I have that's stuck with me for like several years now, which is kind of weird, but it's nothing is wrong and there's plenty of time. And every time I say that to myself, I actually really believe it. Like nothing in this moment is actually wrong. I'm okay. And there's plenty of time. And I think that I guess it hit me hard because I guess I was noticing that I was believing that things were wrong and I didn't have any time.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway.
Well, that reminds me of Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now, where he talks about there is no situation that is wrong.
Yeah.
It's only how you perceive it or the judgment that you place on whatever experience you're having.
I know.
That is like wrong or not wrong, or like you're perceiving it or judging it as being wrong.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, what if we just lived a life where
I know
nothing's wrong
and everything's actually okay. Really wrong. Yeah. And I think Arlo reminded me of it too.
Our son, Arlo.
Our son. Mm-hmm. We were driving in the car and I was saying something about, I think we're going to be late, but that's okay. We'll be late, you know? And he really was serious about it. And he asked me, he's like, Mama, if we're late, what's going to happen? Like, we'll be late.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just, you're so right. Like, we'll be late. Like, nothing's really going to happen.
Nothing's really going to happen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was just a good check.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, before we keep going in this direction, I wanted to bring up the isolation chamber or the
one of the ways that we were writing about in our newsletter is like different practices we can take to actually quiet the mind and get rid of that mental chatter, that monkey mind, so that we can find our true selves and use that as a guide to determine how we want to show up in the world.
Yeah.
I am not a person who does things halfway.
Oh no.
So
Adam's like,
I like intense experiences. And one of the most intense experiences that I've found to quiet the mind is what's called a flotation tank or an isolation tank. And I had heard about this concept and I just had been fascinated by it because I had heard it called meditation on steroids. And I was like, I want meditation on steroids. That sounds fantastic. And
that's great.
That sounds really cool. And so I was like, well, there's got to be a way to do this. And so I looked around, and in one of the near cities to us is a float tank place. Yeah. Like
so cool.
The tank house, I think is what it's called.
Yeah. Or it's I just looked it up today. Tank House Community.
Yeah, Tank House Community.
Is what it's called.
And they have these isolation tanks, which is essentially like 1.5 feet or 2 feet of water with like 1,200 pounds of Epsom salt dissolved into the water. So because of there's salt in the water, like you're super buoyant, you can't sink. They close the door. It's completely dark, completely quiet. The water is the exact temperature of your body. So there's no temperature gradient. Because you're floating, there's no gravity. And there is just no sensation other than what's going on up here inside your mind.
Yeah.
And it really was meditation on steroids.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
So
it
cool.
was amazing. I did 90 minutes, my first session, and 90 minutes of just sitting there
in
silence in the dark with no external stimuli. It was amazing.
It's so cool.
It was so fascinating.
And they also call it sensory deprivation
tank. Because you're depriving yourself of all sensory experience.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you're really just you, like your inner world. Yeah.
Which turns out I like my inner world, just not my monkey mind inside my inner world.
Yeah. So, okay. So you did 90 minutes and then I
did 90 minutes my first time. And then I think I went back and did another 90 minutes. And then you and I went together. They have a couples float tank, which is a tank that's big enough for 2 people to float in.
Cool.
And Maggie was very pregnant at this point.
Yeah. I was towards the end. I think I was like a week away.
Yeah. Probably like a week or 2 away. It was
very close.
Very close to having a baby.
Yeah.
And so she was floating in the tank with a giant belly.
I was like, whoa.
But it was amazing. Yeah, we did it together.
It was so cool.
And I just have been really impressed with. And they say it's a bit of a psychedelic experience because like you get in there and your brain is constantly striving for stimuli.
Yeah.
It's looking for something to kind of focus on.
Yeah.
And because of the lack of temperature gradient and the lack of gravity and the lack of sound and lights, your brain just starts to kind of make up stuff.
Yeah.
And so it really was an incredible, like kind of wild experience. And it kind of resets your parasympathetic nervous system and just kind of allows you to kind of just reconnect with yourself.
Yeah. I was going to bring that up too. How since there's no stimuli, your body has no other choice but to just sink in and relax.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have nothing to look at, nothing, like you can kind of like you feel, but nothing to really feel, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so, so then you just sink in and just relax. And I don't know, it's kind of cool to just think about like on a normal day-to-day basis, you know, when the last time your body really had nothing to do or no stimuli.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's just really cool. So you can really, there's no stressors.
You can really tune in.
You can really tune in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you are looking for meditation on steroids, I highly recommend a flotation tank, an isolation tank.
Yeah.
It's just a really cool experience.
Yeah.
Find someone search around. There are communities out there. There are people out there that have those tanks.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're connected with chiropractic offices, so you might reach out to them and get connected. But oh, little Eva's starting to wake up. And we're back. So our little baby daughter woke up, needed a little something to eat. Now is sitting in her little swing. You might hear her in the background. But that's pretty much what we had in terms of this idea of inner awareness. I think it's really important to recognize that these principles build upon each other. So the first was seeking vitality, the idea of showing up to our lives with a sense of energy and dynamism, both like with our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health.
Yeah.
And with that sense of energy, then discovering how we want to show up in the world. And the only way you can discover that is by getting to know yourself and understanding who you are and how you want to, like I said, to show up into your interactions with the world, that sense of knowing our true self.
Right. And recognizing that there's this kind of inner awareness, inner compass within ourselves. And then moving into, like you said, then the next pillar, which we've chosen, is meaningful relationships. And so really being that steady, strong person in who you are to be able to really show up fully for the people in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And we'll keep going on the framework. But one question I did have for you, Maggie, and this is something that I think we're going to end it there, wasn't it? Let's go back and then say
that was really good.
I know it's good.
Okay.
Meaningful relationships. So say that last little bit about meaningful relationships again.
And then M is for meaningful relationships, where we can really show up for the people in our lives in the way that we want to. Very
good. Well, Maggie, thank you so much for sitting down with me today and talking about our second pillar of our simple framework, inner awareness. I appreciate it. If you have not received the newsletter and want to take a deeper dive on what we talked about there, we had some additional practices. Feel free to take a look at that. Go to findingasimpleabundance.com or adamandmaggie.com and you can take a look and sign up for that. Otherwise, we'll be here next week to talk about, like Maggie said, meaningful relationships and how we can carry that forward and build, again, a life of intention and meaning so that we can build a life of freedom, impact, and purpose.
I love it.
Very cool. Maggie, thanks so much for sitting down with me. Appreciate
it. Absolutely.
All right. Bye.
Bye.